Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach, joins us on Mondays. Many things college football, the conference championship games are coming up. We'll get to that with Phil, Coach Bennett here in a moment. Coach, let's start with where you are. A&M hires Mike Elko. In the end, was that probably who they should have been targeting from the beginning?
Well, I think he was in the initial guys that they spoke to, and they sort of got off track with the Mark Stoops. You know, they were trying to get an SEC background guy, and it sort of, actually exploded in their face when people rebelled over the AD's choice. I think it was good that they went back to somebody they knew. You know, I was hoping that they would look at Jeff also on the second, but I think because of the being familiar with him, that's why they went with Mike.
Phil, did they? With Jimbo, obviously you wanted to make a splash, but did they need practicality in College Station?
They need someone who has structure, has a plan, can get a staff together. I've said this many times. Their recruiting was ranked very high. It didn't equate on the field. And I'm a guy, I've said this forever. Your evaluation is more important than anything you do in recruiting. You have to pick the right guy. And it's so many intangibles. You know, it's size, it's speed, it's strength, but it's also who has the mentality to play at this level. It's such a mental thing. And they just didn't have, if you look at them against LSU or the teams they played, their number one class or their number two class, all these classes that were ranked that Jimbo had didn't have great players. And I'm not saying they were bad players, but they weren't upper level SEC guys. And so hopefully Elko can come in and get a staff together and evaluate kids and do a better job of developing them and then getting them on the field.
Coach, what was your initial impression when you heard about the Stoops rumors, Mark Stoops being the coach initially? I'm not sure how that information came across to you, but when you heard that, would it come well before the Elko news, and kind of how did you digest that originally?
I spent all day Saturday with these people because I know so many of them.
Right.
The higher people start calling me, what about Mark Stoops? And, your first reaction is, well, you just got rid of a guy that was a 7-5 coach or when they hired Jimbo, people don't realize it. But Jimbo had a 5-6 record. When he left, he was 5-6. He didn't coach the UL Monroe game, and so they were. It went crazy. People started calling me, "How are we doing this?" This guy's been there. Well, if you compare A&M to Kentucky, the more you look at it, it's not apples and apples. It's apples and oranges. Kentucky's a basketball school. Mark has done a really good job at Kentucky, where they're tickled to death with 8-4, 9-3, occasional 10-win season. And if he had the things A&M had to offer, a lot of people thought, he could get in that steady in that 10, 11 game range. He doesn't have that capability with recruiting. The state of Kentucky is not great football. He has to go to Florida, has to go to Ohio, where Texas affords him those recruiting abilities. Now, one thing, there's no doubt, he's done a good job evaluating, but the A&M people didn't want to hear that. They were saying, hey, we're not doing this. And I think they put the brakes on it, and went the people, powers that be, told Ross, this is not going to happen. You need to get out of this. And I think they called Mark late in the night and said, hey, it's just not going to work. And of course, gave him an escape so he could, after that big win at Louisville, he could say, you know what, I'm going to stay here. And that's how it came down.
It's nuts, isn't it, Phil? How these things can happen, the backstories, and you're right there in the middle of it. You've been a part of that before yourself. All right, so Houston fires Dana. A&M gets their guy. UCLA is going to stay with Chip Kelly. We Lebby at Mississippi State, which we'll get to, and Baylor with Dave Aranda. They feel like they're going to increase the transfer portal, increase the NIL. He'll take over the defense. Matt Pallage will learn even more from him. Bring in a former offensive coordinator or head coach type. What say you?
It's going to be a struggle. You can paint it any way you want to. That game Saturday, what I saw this year, the leadership's got to come from the top. I don't see it. Plain and simple. You can talk about it. You can say, I'm going to do this. I saw the last drive. Matt Pallage had no one talking to him. I never saw Dave say a word. They kept showing him on the sideline. Was not involved at the end of the game on the game-winning drive. Actions speak. Words, are just words. I don't see the leadership. And Mac has taken a brave stance, probably a career-changing stance with doing this. And I think we all know the coaches say, well, we're going to fire Jeff Grimes. Listen, Jeff Grimes is a good coach. Maybe they didn't have the people, and nobody was saying that 21 Jeff Grimes wasn't a good coach. Whatever the scenario, was go back to the first year. It was the line coach, and it was
Fedora.
It was somebody else's fault. At some point, it's got to go to the top. And I don't care how many good conversations you have about the changing. We're going to do the portal. We're going to do the new NIL. Leadership and decision-making comes from a head coach. I don't see it happening right now for Baylor.
If, in fact, Dave is still learning on the fly, or in this now will be his 5th year as a head coach, he was a genius and a Jedi in 2021. How difficult will it be for him to get any better, if that's the term or phrase, as a head coach when he's now diving in full throttle on defense?
You're going to hire an offensive coordinator that knows it's one or done. You're going to you win, you get to stay. You got uncertainties at every position. Hiring the right guy. And don't get me wrong, there's coaches out there that can do the job and make vast improvement, because you've heard me say many times, coaching matters. I don't see Dave being a head coach and running the defense. I never, I know my personality. You have, if you have been the path that we've been, you would have been very involved in that final drive. And it was a drive that we knew that it was a game changer. Win or lose, and you sit there and you watch it. I couldn't. It killed me, and I just don't see. I can tell you this: sometimes being in that seat, it wears you out. You lose your. I don't know if you call it your groove, but you lose your fire in some things. And for him to try to do both, it's going to be a struggle.
Are you suggesting that on the headsets he's not communicating enough during the game with maybe Pallage?
Absolutely, I'm telling you that. I would have been sitting there. All right, here we go. You talk about this guy has been a coordinator at Wisconsin, Hawaii, and LSU. Give him some. This kid has never been a coordinator. Before this year, he'd never made a call. He had been on offense. He had been, and he is a good young coach. I'm not saying that. But give him direction. Give him, hey, here's what we got. He scrambles. We want to be aware of that. We want to, somehow on first down, we've got to get him off the stick. First down was such a crucial down. And then before you know it, he scrambles and they're down the field in a matter of 20 seconds. They're just, you discuss those things, and it's like the end of the Alabama game, not rushing the quarterback, giving him, unlimited amount of time. You can't play coverage that long. And I just think that's got to come from the top. And and I don't have a thing against anyone, but I've just watched it too many times this season from watching these games. You can't tell me that all of a sudden we're gonna say, hey, we're gonna do this and this, and it's gonna change. There's got to be some drastic changes.
Phil, you know the new head coach at Mississippi State pretty well, Jeff Lebby.
I do.
You know him. He's was a guy, and I'll just tell you this: when he was here, he's a young coach. Like sometimes you can see head coaching a guy from the outside, from our perspective. Jeff was always someone who was a little bit quieter, so I never kind of got that vibe. And then all of a sudden, UCF and Ole Miss, and the way he's climbed up the ladder, he certainly changed that perception. What kind of a head coach do you think Jeff will be?
Well, I think one of the things about Jeff, I'm going to go back to when he was a young coach. Jeff was a really good listener, and Jeff was smart. At times, I thought, people talked about Kendall. Art used to let him call plays when we had big leads. I don't know if y'all knew this. He'd say, "All right, Kendall, you got you've got this series," or "Jeff, you got the next series," and he was training them. And I remember Randy Clements telling me, he goes, "Phil, watch Jeff call these games." And Jeff had a feel for it, a natural feel. Of course, he had been a lineman, and he'd learned the passing game. Jeff is intelligent about football, offensive football, numbers. And we always felt like, even when Phillip was there, we had guys, him, Kendall, that he had it. And Jeff is a guy that he was a great recruiter. He's a personable guy. He's a guy that he has great ability. I say this again, to listen. And one of the things I'm so proud of, really proud, when all that mess went down and everything went south, he and Randy went to like Florida Southwest. I don't even know the name of the place. But I remember they used to call me when they would be on a bus taking a 17-hour road trip. And to see him get that job is pretty gratifying for everybody that knows what he's been through.
Oklahoma now needs an offensive coordinator. And what do you think they might do? They've got a hell of a young quarterback in the kid, Jackson Arnold. Your thoughts about what they might do with the Venables there?
Well, I think Seth's in the mix if he wants.
Okay.
Seth with Seth.
All right.
And, Seth, people forget now, Seth called some hell of a game. When I was at Baylor and we played North Carolina in the bowl game, Art's last game, and I watched every game, North Carolina, and they were one bad call away from winning the ACC the year that Clemson won the national championship. And Seth did a hell of a job on offense. And Seth has a feel, much like with a little bit different tang than some of the Brow stuff, but he has a good feel about run pass, calling games. I think if he wants it, which I don't know if he does, I think he will be in the mix there.
Coach, any thoughts on Houston moving on from Dana Holgorsen?
I think they saw what I talked about. I think they saw a lack of ability to performance, organization, numerous things, mental mistakes over and over again. They just didn't feel like they were getting what they felt like they needed out of it. And I'll tell you, I thought it was a bold move, but at the same time, I think it was the right move. You can sit there and say, well, we should have done this, should have done that. But the thing about coaching is that tape doesn't lie. You're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen.
Phil, with Houston open, UTSA is trying to find more money to help maybe spice up what they can do with the assistant coaches and their salaries. Jeff Traylor, it appeared, might have A&M, Houston, and Baylor at his fingertips. Is there a chance we're going to go another offseason and he is still not at another school or a Power 5 school?
I would be surprised if Houston didn't make a run at Jeff with what he's done. And they've made a commitment being in the Big 12. Their resources are going to be better. I would sure think so because he's done such a wonderful job. And this is a crazy time of year. A lot of things can happen. And I'm not saying that, hey, he needs to leave for any job, but I think Houston's a potentially really good job. And I hope he gets the opportunity to visit with them.
Phil Bennett, former college football coach, with us on 365 Sports. Craig?
Coach, there was so many interesting games from this past weekend, and now we've got conference championship weekend ahead of us. I know it's a very broad question, but a couple of things that just stand out to you, either from the games you watched this past weekend or what's upcoming this weekend.
The Texas game stuck out in my mind. I think that's the best I've seen Texas play in many years. Defensively, they're good. They're fast. They stop the run. They know what they're doing. They're coached well. And then, of course, they lose their best running back, and they go in. They have the ability to run the ball. I think Ewing's is getting better. I really want to see what happens. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they'll just beat Oklahoma State, but I want to see what happens if they win that game and say Alabama does beat Georgia, where this goes, or vice versa, Georgia beats Alabama, and Oregon, how that will play out. You got a pair of games, Texas Tech should have beaten Oregon, and yet, you've got the other comparison game of Oregon and Washington. Those people are going to have some. Texas very well can end up in the Final Four.
Phil, all I care about is that Florida State finds a way to beat Louisville. That's all. I will tell you this, Paul, that they showed great determination. You watched that game, and the thing that stuck out in my mind, I was really disappointed in Florida's discipline. I mean, my goodness, I work with Billy. I know he's a great coach. But they were a team that just killed themselves time after time with discipline issues.
Phil, it's always great to hear from you, man. We appreciate your time, and maybe get you after the championship games, and we'll know then who's going to play in the semifinals as well. We appreciate your time.
I'd like to talk about that. This was, of course, I told my wife, I hate this time of year. My phone blows up.
Oh, yeah.
Can you help me? Can you help me there? But it's a time of change. It sure is.
Is your phone blowing up for any other reason? They're calling you to see what you want to do?
You know what? This is when you're glad you're out of it. Yeah, I'm sitting out here by my pool right now with my dogs and fixing to go walk them. So life's pretty good right now, Smoak.
That's good. We want it to be for you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Phil Bennett.
Thank you, guys.
Former
Bye-bye.
Baylor, a longtime college football coach with us on 365 Sports.
Yeah, I saw it mentioned there in the chat.